My 30-year-old sister Kim had her birthday dinner 2 nights ago. There were about 12 people in attendance. Kim and I aren't close. She was the golden child and I was the scapegoat. Kim was always very cruel to me and got away with it because my mom never held her accountable. Kim had one too many drinks at dinner and began telling an incredibly traumatizing story from my childhood. Kim constantly tells this story as if it's goofy and lighthearted. The trauma from this situation impacts my daily life. When I was 9 and Kim was 12, we were at my neighbor Nate's house, who was 13. Nate had an old storage trunk in his room. Kim convinced me to get in the trunk. The trunk had a built-in lock that didn't work. Once I was inside, they closed the lid, and somehow the lock on the trunk suddenly worked again. They tried for several minutes to get it open. At first, I thought they were just messing with me and pretending they couldn't open it. Once I realized they weren't joking, I began to panic. Nate refused to get his parents because he didn't want to get in trouble. He then began making jokes to scare me, like, "Let's throw the trunk down the stairs to see if that opens it, and let's set it on fire and burn her out." After an hour being trapped in there, he said, "I'm not getting in trouble for this. I'm going to watch TV." He and Kim left the room to go watch TV while I cried and panicked. They came back an hour later and tried opening the trunk again. My legs had gone numb and my whole body was aching. I had been crying for hours and told them I felt like I was running out of air. They discussed how they could get me out without getting in trouble. Finally, after almost 3 hours of being stuck in there, he finally got his parents. His dad came running in with a crowbar and pried the lid open. His parents apologized to me profusely and grounded Nate. My parents did nothing to discipline Kim and told me I was being dramatic. That experience traumatized me, and to this day I am severely claustrophobic. I can't even cuddle my fiancé because it's too constricting. Kim began telling the trunk story for the 1,000th time, laughing throughout as if it was an amusing childhood story. Without raising my voice, I cut her off and said, "That's not a funny story, Kim. You're always telling this story like it's a cute tale from our youth." That was traumatizing. I have regular nightmares and flashbacks from that day. To this day, I have extreme claustrophobia. I could have died from suffocation. It's not like I was in there for 10 minutes, I was in there for almost 3 hours. Everyone got really quiet and just kind of awkwardly stared at their food. We sat in silence for the rest of the meal. It definitely ended the life of the vibe. Kim and my mom sent me angry texts saying that I owed Kim an apology for making a scene and ruining her birthday. Every time she tells that story, it's like I'm in the trunk again. All the trauma comes flooding back. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So the next time she starts to tell the story, interrupt her and tell your own story of how your sister and neighbor attempted to unalive you by locking you in a trunk with diminishing air, and how they were more concerned with getting into trouble than saving you, and how you still have trauma caused by the incident. You can add that your sister has never apologized, how your parents never got you assistance, and they pampered your entitled, almost unaliving sister. Then ask her if she has grown up yet. She will probably never bring it up again. No TA. Comment 2. Not the idiot, Kim and your mom are awful. Have you considered going no contact? I can't imagine wanting to ever interact with such despicable people ever again. Edit. Saw that you have a good relationship with your niece. I can think of some solutions that do not involve no contact. How comfortable are you discussing your own trauma? Could you, hypothetically, make it your story instead of letting your sister tell her version over and over? Maybe that could work in the future. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for this update. So after that whole birthday dinner disaster, things went from bad to worse. The next day my mom called me, and I thought maybe she'd finally see my side. Nope, she said I was being selfish and that I should apologize to Kim for ruining her special day. Can you believe that? I hung up on her. Then out of nowhere, Nate, the neighbor kid from the trunk incident, reached out to me. He said he felt terrible about what happened when we were kids and wanted to make amends. We met up and he was so apologetic it actually felt genuine. He even offered to pay for therapy sessions. I was floored. Nate and I started talking more, and it seemed like he really changed. We actually became sort of friends, which was the last thing I expected. But here's where it gets twisted. Nate invited me over to his place to hang out, and guess who was there? Kim. She was all buddy-buddy with Nate, and they were laughing about the old times. I felt sick. It was like they planned this to mess with me again. Nate said it was just a coincidence, but I didn't buy it. I left immediately, feeling betrayed all over again. The next day, Kim called me, acting all sweet, saying she wanted to bury the hatchet. She invited me over to her place to talk things out. I was hesitant, but I went, thinking maybe this was finally it, the moment she'd own up to her cruelty. But when I got there, it was an ambush. My whole family was there and they staged this intervention, telling me I needed to let go of the past and stop holding grudges. They said I was tearing the family apart. I was so angry I couldn't see straight. But then Kim did something unexpected. She broke down crying, saying she was sorry that she didn't realize how much she hurt me. She said she wanted to be a better sister. Everyone was looking at me like it was my move. So I did it. I forgave her. I thought maybe this was the start of something new. Everyone was hugging and it felt like a weight was lifted. But that night, I found out it was all a lie. Kim's best friend, who felt guilty about the whole thing, sent me screenshots of texts between Kim and Nate. They were laughing about how they fooled me into forgiving Kim, how I fell for their little performance. They never cared about how I felt. It was all just a game to them. I was crushed. I made the wrong choice, trusting Kim again, and I didn't even know it. I should have known better. Now I'm left picking up the pieces, trying to figure out how to move forward after being played like that. It's one thing to be betrayed by someone you trust, but it's another to be made a fool of in front of your whole family. Thanks for reading this mess of an update. My mom springs babysitting on me for 4 wild kids with no warning, so when we move and my annoying cousin comes to stay, I put my foot down and make sure she's sent packing. This had just made me super mad, so I just wanted to tell somebody. So I, 16-year-old female, and my mom were talking last night, and she mentioned that she and my dad were going to go on a date tonight and asked if I could babysit my younger sister, 5, and only her. I said sure because I low-key need money. This morning, I walk downstairs and say hi to my mom and start talking to her. Randomly, she mentions we have to clean the house today. I was a little confused because we usually deep clean the house every Saturday, so I ask why. This is when she mentions that my cousins are coming over, 4-year-old female, 3-year-old male, 2-year-old male. Again, I was confused, so I asked why they would be coming over, and she said that I would be babysitting tonight. I immediately tell her that she didn't ask me beforehand, and that she said I would only need to babysit my sister. She says that she was going to go on a date and then go to an event with my aunts and uncles. Now don't get me wrong, I love my cousins, but they are very hard to deal with. I can deal with screaming children, but they are on a different level, and I get super stressed if I have to watch only 2 of them, so 4 is going to be a challenge. My other sister, 13, will also be there, but she kind of just sits there the entire time, and I usually have to take care of them. When I only babysit my sister, I can have her in my room playing with Barbies or something while I read, so babysitting her is easy. I am now really mad at my mom for just setting me up with this babysitting job without even mentioning it to me until like an hour ago, especially when I probably won't get paid a lot for it. So would I be the jerk for refusing? Update. The kids aren't here yet, but I wanted to know how much I would be paid and said I didn't like how I wasn't asked about babysitting. And my mom said, "This is what happens when you have a C in a class. You won't do anything until May, so that means you will babysit for me and I won't have to ask you." Then threatened that if I show any attitude, then I won't get paid. Payment would be $10 an hour. Not sure if it's per kid as well. I might also have to make dinner for all of them, which might just be mac and cheese, which isn't a lot of work, but still. Update 2, post-babysitting. It was a nightmare. They wouldn't listen and kept running around and jumping off the couches. Crying, screaming. We even lost 2 of them for a couple of minutes because they ran off into the basement. So we had to close off the top floor and basement. One of them broke a snow globe and there was glass everywhere. They kept throwing coins and ceramic teacups around, so we had to confiscate them. I have a pounding headache now, and I don't even think I'm getting paid more than like $30. Safe to say, I will never agree to babysit ever again. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So would I be the jerk for refusing? Not the idiot, she did the old bait and switch. Demand more money or refuse, whichever you prefer. She says that she was going to go on a date and then go to an event with my aunts and uncles. They can all chip in for a babysitter. Comment 2, NTA. I'm 36 and I wouldn't babysit 4 toddlers, and certainly not for the price of 1. 4 toddlers would be $80 an hour, paid in advance. If they are late, then that can be paid afterward. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around after my last post. Here's what went down next. The evening after the babysitting fiasco, I was hoping for some peace, but no such luck. My mom dropped another bomb on me. She said we were moving. Not just to a new neighborhood, but across the country. My dad got a job offer he couldn't refuse, and they decided it was best for our family. I was shocked. No discussion, no warning, just, pack your bags, we're leaving in a week. I was furious. I had friends here, my school, my life, and now because of my dad's job, everything was changing. My sister seemed excited, but I couldn't share her enthusiasm. I felt betrayed and uprooted. The move was chaotic, boxes everywhere, my parents constantly arguing about what to keep and what to throw away. It was clear the stress was getting to them too. My mom snapped at me for not packing fast enough, and my dad was distant, lost in his own world of stress and new responsibilities. We arrived at our new home, and it was nothing like our old place. Smaller, in a neighborhood that didn't feel as welcoming. I missed my old room, my friends, the familiar streets. My sister adapted quickly, making new friends, but I struggled. I felt like an outsider in my own home. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, my mom announced that my troublesome cousin, the one who had broken the snow globe, was coming to stay with us for a while. His parents were going through a rough patch, and they thought a change of scenery might do him good. I couldn't believe it. The same cousin who had turned my babysitting night into a nightmare was now going to be living with us. He arrived, and immediately the house was in chaos again. He was even more unruly than before, if that was possible. He didn't respect our rules, talk back to my parents, and was a terrible influence on my sister. I was at my wit's end. One day I came home to find my room trashed. My cousin had decided it was funny to go through my things and make a mess. That was the last straw. I confronted him and we had a huge fight. My parents had to pull us apart. I told them it was him or me. I couldn't live like this anymore. My parents were torn, but they knew our family couldn't go on like this. They sat down with my cousin and explained that he couldn't stay with us if he continued to behave this way. He threw a tantrum, but it was clear my parents were serious. They arranged for him to go back home. After he left, the house was quiet, almost too quiet. But it was a relief. I started to settle into my new life, making a few friends at school, finding little things about our new town that I liked. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I learned that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even if it means causing a rift in the family. It wasn't easy, but in the end, my parents saw that our family's well-being was more important than trying to fix someone else's problems. Thanks for reading. It's been a chaotic ride, but I'm hanging in there. My son's girlfriend moves in and acts like she owns the place. So I kick her out and make sure she learns respect the hard way. I, 42-year-old female, live with my husband of 7 months, Roland, 45-year-old male, and my son Silas, 20-year-old male. My son had been seeing a girl named Louise, 19-year-old female, for a little over a year. About her, I only met her a handful of times. She grew up in foster care and lived in special supervised accommodations for young people who have aged out of the system. She also received some kind of settlement totaling a little over $100 million, so she at least had a little money to her name. The day before Roland and I got married, my son tells me that Louise decided to leave where she lived because she felt she lacked privacy due to frequent visits from the building supervisors. She had been looking for an apartment for months with no success as she's unemployed, and most landlords in my city require proof of employment. She had already notified the folks at her transitory accommodations that she would be leaving, so she had nowhere to go once the deadline for her to leave arrived. He asked if she could come stay with us until she figured things out, which I agreed to without much thought, as my mind was occupied with all the last-minute wedding preparations. 10 days later after the wedding, she moves in. We all agreed that this would be a temporary situation until Louise found her own place. We discussed what my house rules were: treat everyone with respect and pick up after yourself. I also told Silas and Louise that if they hadn't found accommodations after 1 month, I would start charging them a bit of rent to cover the increased expense of having a new household member. For the first month that she was with us, she did no chores and would leave dirty dishes in the sink. My husband and I called a family meeting where we discussed how we would like chores to be split. She rejected all but one of the chores on the list, cleaning the bathroom, which she rarely did to the point where we just didn't bother asking her to do it anymore. Then for the disrespectful behavior, yelling, cursing, and screaming at me when I would confront her about undesirable behaviors, complaining that we made too much noise when getting ready for work in the morning, etc. After an argument in November, I told my son that she needed to be out of my house by March 1st. She just stayed in my son's room all day doing heaven knows what while he went to school and work. In mid-February, I reminded Silas that she was to be gone by March 1st. Then February 29th rolls in. That morning, as my husband was leaving for work, Louise screamed from my son's room, "OMG, why does he have to be so freaking loud?" When Silas came out of his room, I told him that she needed to leave. Things escalated and the cops got involved. She and my son are now gone. I reached out to my son so that we could talk, but it's been the silent treatment from him since. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the jerk. Hang in there, your son will probably get sick of having to care for a woman who won't work in or out of the house. especially since I'm sure once she doesn't have you and your husband to cuss out, she'll start doing it to him. You did the right thing to protect yourself and your husband, and went above and beyond to support your son in supporting his girlfriend until she became unbearable. Comment 2, not a jerk. She was disrespectful, ignored your rules, and had over 3 months warning. If she had $10,000, she should have been able to get a place. Maybe even buy a place. You stood your ground, and good for you. Give son time. He will likely see her true colors soon. If not, he is an adult and will need to own his choices. Try to keep lines of communication open. Good luck. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for the latest. So the cops came that day, and it was a mess. Louise and Silas packed their stuff and left. I felt a mix of relief and heartache, watching my son walk out like that. Roland tried to calm me down, but I was too upset. I kept thinking, I just wanted some peace in my own home. A week went by with no word from Silas. I was worried sick. Then out of the blue, he texted, "We need to talk." We met at a coffee shop, the air thick with tension. Silas looked tired and Louise wasn't with him. He said they'd been staying with a friend, but it was clear that wasn't working out. He told me Louise had found a job, but they still couldn't afford a place. I felt a pang of guilt. I wanted to help, but after everything, I was hesitant. Roland was against it, saying we'd already done enough. But Silas was my kid and I couldn't turn my back on him. We came up with a plan. They could move back in, but only if they followed the rules. No more yelling, no more mess. They agreed. It was a fresh start, or so I thought. Things were okay for a while. Louise was working at a local diner and Silas was juggling school and a part-time job. But the peace didn't last. One evening, I came home early and found Louise on the couch, money scattered everywhere. She was counting her settlement cash, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy about it. I didn't want to pry, but I asked her about it. She snapped at me, saying it was none of my business. I backed off, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. Roland was furious when I told him. He said we were being taken advantage of, and maybe he was right. Then one day, Roland's watch went missing. It was a family heirloom, and he treasured it. We searched everywhere, but it was nowhere to be found. Accusations flew, and Louise got defensive. She said we were blaming her because of her past. It was a low blow, and it hurt. The tension was unbearable. Roland and I were arguing now, too. It was like Louise's presence was poisoning everything. I felt trapped in my own home, walking on eggshells around my son and his girlfriend. Finally, I had enough. I told Silas they had to leave, for real this time. He was angry, saying we didn't trust him or Louise. But I stood my ground. They packed their bags, and this time I knew it was for good. The next day, Silas called. He found the watch. It had fallen behind the dresser. He apologized, and so did I. But the damage was done. They found a small studio apartment, and Louise's job was enough to cover the rent. They were moving on, and so were we. It was bittersweet. I missed my son, but I knew he needed to live his own life. Roland and I had our home back, but it felt empty without Silas. We hoped one day things would be better between us all. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!